We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose. We just crushed their face.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Glory UGA podcast, brought to you by your friends at MyBookie and Alumni Hall. And we've got a big one this week. It's Georgia, it's Alabama, it's the SEC Championship. Two power programs playing for supremacy in the greatest conference of them all. It doesn't get any bigger than that in the world of college football. So today, I'm previewing this rematch between SEC Superpowers in Atlanta on Saturday by telling you what the Dogs have to do to turn the tide on Alabama this time around. But first, guys, if you are a diehard Georgia fan, you come to the right spot. Everything we do here is 100% designed for all you diehard Georgia people. So go ahead, subscribe, turn those notifications on, like, comment. What are your thoughts on this rematch? How you feeling? What do you think the Dogs have to do? Is this the game where the Dogs finally flip the script on Alabama, or will it be more of the same? Love to hear from you guys, and thank you so much for all of your support. But all right, here's the deal with this preview today, guys. I've already done a deep dive preview of a Georgia-Alabama game earlier this season, back in late September, the first time around, right? You all know this team. You know this Alabama roster. You know the players. So in an effort to avoid just doing what would essentially amount to a repeat of the deep dive preview from that earlier matchup this season, I'm going to approach this preview a little bit differently than I have been doing all season. I have been doing for quite some time on the Glory UGA podcast. Instead of following my usual countdown format that I've been using all year, I've been using for a couple years now on the audio side of things, and you guys know me, I like a nice organized format. I'm a type A guy. That's who I am at heart. But I'm going to abandon that. I'm going to abandon that format for this one episode, for this preview. And instead, I'm going to focus this conversation on what needs to change for Georgia in this rematch if the Dogs do want to find a way to flip that script on Alabama and knock off the tide for the first time since that glorious night of January 10th, 2022. You guys know what I'm talking about. What a night. Let's feel that again. It won't feel quite the same because it's not a national championship, but beating Alabama in a title setting would be glorious once again. And that's what we're looking at today. How can Georgia do that? What has to change for Georgia to turn the tide, to flip the script, and actually win this football game? And guys, we're talking about small margins here. Georgia has lost the last three games. Yeah, we've lost the last three. That's a reality. It is what it is. We can't be in denial. We've lost all three of those, but we've lost those three games by a combined 13 points. We have two losses by 3 points. We have that one loss in Tuscaloosa last year by a touchdown, but all three of those games, all one-score games, and all three of them came down to the final minute. So there really isn't a lot that has to change for Georgia in order to swing this game in the Dogs' favor. It's not like we need like wholesale changes here. It's like it's going to take a miracle for Georgia to some way, somehow find a way to beat Alabama. But there are some things obviously that need to change because we keep losing these games. And somewhere along the way, we got to figure out why that's happening, change that so we can actually reverse our fortunes, right? So that's why I want to focus the conversation on today. I have four things that Georgia needs to change on Saturday in Mercedes-Benz Stadium if it wants to get this Bama monkey off its back once again. I thought we got it off our back on that January 10th night back in 2022, but it jumped right back on. It's been on there for the past couple years, and we want to get that monkey off our freaking back for good. So how do we do that? Let's dive in, guys. Number one here, this is specific to this year. There are a couple of these keys, these things I think need to change that are kind of commonalities across the last three losses, but this one is unique to this year in this loss to Alabama back in September. If we want to win this football game, we have got to find a way to do a better job of affecting the passer. Guys, Ty Simpson, Alabama's quarterback, he's really good. He hasn't been as good lately. Their passing game was really humming along in the mid part of the season. They started out slow against Florida State, got better, right? We kind of started to pick up the pace against us, and they were really humming for a while. Lately, it's kind of fallen off a little bit. Haven't been as explosive. I don't want to say that they've been exposed. That's going a little far. It's a little strong, but they haven't been. I mean, the numbers tell you what it is, guys. They haven't been as prolific throwing the football as they were for about a 4 to 5 game stretch in the middle of the season. But going back to my first preview of the season against these two teams, right? With these two teams facing off back in late September, my biggest key in that preview in the first matchup was Georgia's got to be able to stop the run and get Alabama into third and long. And then once we do that, let the pass rushers go to work against two tackles and Caden Proctor and Wilkin Formby that I believe coming in the game, watching it earlier in the year, have had issues holding up on the edge consistently. Certainly, if they get one-on-one out there, they don't have some help out there. And I thought personally, I was wrong. Obviously, I thought Georgia would be able to do. And that's a big part of why I did pick Georgia to win a close game, but picked Georgia to win that game the first time around because I thought that Georgia would be able to stop the run, which they did, right, guys? Alabama in that game only averaged 3 yards a run. And so I thought that once we were to stop the run, which again we did, that we would get Bama into third long, which we did, guys. They had 13 third down situations of 3rd and 5 or more in the game. Now, technically, like 3rd and 7 is really classified as third and long. But if you're in 3rd and 5 or more, if it's third down, you got 5 or more yards to go. More often than not, in this day and age of football, you're throwing the football. So I classify that as like obvious passing situations. So we got them into 13 third down obvious passing situations that would, what I thought coming to the game, would allow us to then pin our ears back, get our exotic dime package out in the field, right, and bring our passers on the field. We do a really good job. Like generally speaking, like historically, what do we do at Georgia? On standard downs, we focus on stopping the run. We want to get you third and long. Then we get you third and long. We bring the dime package out there. We get exotic. We bring some different pressure packages at you. We change up the personnel, and we get after the passer, right? That was the formula back in 2024, last year. And so early in the year, we didn't quite know the Georgia pass rush wasn't up to snuff. There were some signs like maybe it's not going to be great, but there was some context there. So I was still in wait and see mode back in game 4. Well, that was when I decided, guys, we don't got it. Like we don't have the pass rush this year because of those 13 third down and 5s or more, guys, they converted 8 of them. Not a math guy. I can do that. That's 62% conversion on 3rd and 5 or more. They were 13 of 19 on third down overall. And that really was kind of the difference in the game. Like, yeah, we made a bunch of mistakes in that game. Sure, that we shot ourselves in the foot for sure. But from an X and O standpoint, in my opinion, Georgia's inability in that game against Alabama to affect the passer when we stopped the run and consistently 13 times got them to 3rd and 5 or more. Our inability to affect the passer in any meaningful way in those situations is ultimately, from an X and O standpoint, what did us in that game. So that has to change on Saturday if we want to flip the script and win this rematch. Guys, I think the formula is still the same. That's why I didn't want to like do a full-on repeat of that same preview episode because the formula is the same, guys. How are we going to beat this Alabama team? It starts with stopping the run, get them third and long, but the question becomes, can you actually affect the passer this time in a way that you were not able to the first time around? And why do I think that's still the formula? Well, guys, we watch Bama. I know you have. You're diehard fans. You watch these teams. Bama still can't run the football. They run the football a little bit better against Auburn. I was surprised they run the football as well as against Auburn. But by and large, all year long, guys, they can't run the football. They're 13th in the SEC, 103rd nationally in rushing offense. Guys, they're barely rushing for over 100 yards a game against SEC opponents. 109 yards a game against SEC opponents. They've been held under 100 yards in almost 50% of their games. 100 yards rushing. 5 out of 12 games this season, they've been held under 100 yards rushing. They've only broken the 4 yards per rush barrier 3 times all season. 3 times out of 12 games. That ain't getting it done, guys. So when I say they can't run the football, that's what I'm talking about. The numbers tell you that, right? If Alabama fans have found this and they're listening, like, just be real with yourself, guys. You can't run the football, right? I'm not saying Bama's not good. I'm not saying Bama doesn't deserve to be in this game. I'm not saying Bama can't win this game. Obviously, they can win this game. They beat Georgia earlier in the year. But Bama can't run the football. That's been the case all year. That's not going to change, right? And Georgia on the other side has a fringe top 5 rush defense, number 6 in the country right now, and just held Georgia Tech to by far its lowest rushing output of the season, really its lowest rushing output of the last 2 years. And that's one of the most dynamic rushing attacks in the entire country that Georgia Tech has. And Georgia completely shut down that run game. Now, Georgia's offensive performance, that's a different story, but defensively, lights out. One of only 2 teams to hold Tech to single digits the last 2 seasons. And oh yeah, there's also this. Alabama might be without Jan Miller, their best running back in this game. He went out in the game that was early in the second half, maybe late first half against Auburn. He was out there kind of walking. I can't remember if it was a boot, but he was on crutches going. I think he was going to the locker room at halftime. So his status is kind of up in the air. Kalen DeBoer was non-committal, like, hey, we're going to see what he does early in the week, but we're not sure there. But even if he does play, like, what is his health like? What version of Jan Miller is Alabama going to get in this game? So, yes, I still believe that Georgia should be able to stop the run in this game. Now, Bama's going to get creative. They know they got to find a way to run the football a little bit better, right? So they're going to do some things they did against Auburn, right? They're going to use the wide receivers in the run game. They'll use some fly sweep action. They'll probably use Ty Simpson's legs a little bit more. There's a key third down against Auburn in the Iron Bowl where they actually use his legs. Simpson's a good athlete, guys. Now, he's not the biggest guy in the world. He doesn't have like the most powerful frame, so they don't want to run him as much as maybe Georgia's willing to run Gunner Stockton. But he's a good athlete, and they have the ability to use him in the design QB run game, and they pull that out at times. And I would not be surprised if they do that again in this game. They'll also likely turn to the quick passing game on early downs to try to stay ahead of the chains and stay out of those third and long situations. But again, Georgia should be able to stop the run. And Georgia should be able to get Alabama once again into third and long pretty consistently, like we were able to 13 times in that first matchup. But again, the question is can the Dogs actually make Bama pay when we get them into those third longs? That is what has to change. Now, I'm hopeful that can change. Georgia's pass rush is very different now than it was back in late September. It has improved dramatically. We all know the numbers. I spent three-fourths of the season just lamenting the fact that we were just entirely incapable of doing anything to rush the passer, to affect the passer in any meaningful way. 8 sacks in the first 8 games, won a game, which is like mind-numbing stuff. Like, that's crazy that Georgia couldn't rush the passer better for most of the year. But over the last 4 games, we have changed with the personnel some. You see more guys like Zayden Walker. Elo Madozi's coming on a little bit. Gabe Harris is really improving as a pass rusher off the edge rush. Even Quintavious Johnson doing some better things. We're changing up some of our pressure packages, the way that we're using our linebackers. We're doing a better job of rushing the passer. 9 sacks over the last 4 games. We had 8 sacks through the first 8 games. And I still do think that Caden Proctor and Wilkin Formby are vulnerable on the edges. I'm not saying they're garbage. They're good players. I don't think they're like elite guys. No, like Proctor gets that log. He's a big time 5-star guy coming to high school. I don't think he's ever been that great. I think he's been like functional. I don't think he's an elite first round guy. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, but I just see this guy get beat one-on-one too much for me to sit there and say, oh, like, well, he's impregnable. Like, there's no way that we can get past him. I think those guys are vulnerable if Georgia can find a way to actually affect the passer. I think there's going to be opportunities here. So if Georgia can do that, that would go a long way and changing the Dogs' fortunes in this game, in this rivalry. All right, number 2 here. We'll stick with the X's and O's. Stop giving Alabama free access yards on the outside in the pass game. 3 matchups in a row. We've lost all 3 of them, right? 3 matchups in a row in this rivalry, in this series against these 2 programs. We have come out playing a bunch of off coverages, playing a lot of bail technique stuff. Why? In my opinion, I don't know this for a fact, but just me spitballing here, likely because we are scared of giving up the deep ball. Because Jalen Miller wasn't a great passer. What did he do well throwing the football? Push the ball vertically down the field, right? They ran the ball well with him. He get safeties in the box. They had good receivers. He can throw that deep ball very well. Short intermediate stuff, erratic. You don't know what's going to happen there. But deep ball, he was very good at that. So 2 matches against them with Jalen Milroe. We didn't want to give up the deep ball there. We wanted to force them to be efficient down the field, march on the field 13, 14 plays, and see if you can do that enough to beat us. And then with this version of Alabama, Ty Simpson is a much more proficient passer. They have 3 really good receivers, right? You got Ryan Williams, you got Jeremy Bernard, who is their top receiver, and Isaiah Horton, the transfer by me, is really coming on lately. He's been having a lot of success with them, been a bigger part of their offense. So they definitely have a really strong passing game. And so I understand why there would be some concern on the part of the Georgia staff, the defensive staff, on trying to not give up explosive plays. But as we saw in the first matchup, guys, if you give them the free access yards, if you're lining up 8 to 10 yards off the ball on first down, on second down, on third down, on any down, Bama showed in that first matchup they are willing to take those free access yards every single time, all game long. Like, sure, if you watch the first matchup, which I know all of you did, like, we did a good job of limiting explosive plays. Like, we didn't give up a ton of explosives to them. It's a really good passing attack or explosive passing attack. And their longest play was 27 yards. And that was actually a screen pass to one of their running backs. So they weren't really pushing the ball down the field vertically the way they were maybe back in 2024 on the road in Tuscaloosa. They weren't killing us with that. But what they were doing when we're playing the off coverage and some of the bail technique stuff, they were dicing us up with the 9, the 10, the 12-yard gains when we're playing 10 yards off the freaking ball. They were patient enough to take what we were giving them. So what has to change this time? It's simple. Stop doing that. Get up in their face and challenge them. Our cornerbacks are in a different place now than they were back in the fourth game of the season, back in late September. Ellis Robinson the fourth, former five-star guy, number 2 player in the country back in the 2024 class. Him and DeMello Jones have both really emerged on the outside for Georgia, and we know that Dalen Everett's a really, really good cornerback in his own right. Ellis and DeMello are far more confident. They're far better than they were. And our coaches, I think, have more confidence in both those guys now than they did earlier in the year. So I want to get in their face a little bit. I want to challenge. Now, of course, when you do that, you do run the risk of getting beat deep and giving out some explosives. Of course you do. Like that's the trade-off here. But I'm of the mind you can't give them free access yards because they already shown they're just going to take it. Make them do it. If they're going to beat you with explosives, make them do it. Make them earn it. Do not just hand them 10 free yards and let them march down the field 10 yards at a time, 9, 10, 11, 12 yards at a time because you are too scared to let your five-star cornerbacks get up in their face and man coverage and man up on the outside. Like, if you're scared of that, what are we paying these guys for? What are we paying Ellis Robinson for? What are we paying DeMello for? What are we paying Dalen Everett for if we're scared to let them get up in their face and actually make them earn it on the outside? I think this is also a big part of us getting in the third long is if we're able to stop the run this matchup the way that I think that we're going to, they're going to try to counter likely with the quick passing game. And if you just sit back playing that soft off coverage stuff and give it to them, give them the free access yards, you are playing directly into their hands. Get after them and make them earn it on the outside. If that changes, I really like Georgia's chances in this game. We got to see it, though. We got to see it. Now, those are the X's and O's that I think need to change in this matchup if Georgia does want to reverse its fortunes. Now, these last two that I'm going to run through, these are common things that we've seen across the last 3 games, the 3 losses that Georgia's had to Alabama since that national championship game back in January of 2022. Now, in my opinion, guys, I know if Alabama fans have found this, you're going to vehemently disagree. That's fine. That's fine. But in my opinion, Georgia has been the better team each of the last 3 times these two programs have played. Now, what I mean by better is more talented, right? That's I should probably qualify that. Maybe not better. I think Georgia's been the more talented team each last 3 times. A part of being the better team is not always just about talent. Talent's a part of the equation of being better, but so is execution. So is going out and playing a clean game. And that is where Bama has excelled, and that is where Georgia has fallen short each of the last 3 times. I think if both teams, so we got to clarify this. When I say Georgia is the more talented team, I think each of the last 3 times these two teams have played, if both teams came out and played their absolute A game, the very best they could possibly play, I believe Georgia would have won all 3 of those games. But that isn't what has happened, right? Georgia's lost all 3 of those games. Why? Well, it's simple. Because Bama has played the cleaner game in all 3 of those games. And that's also a big part of the equation of like who is the better team. It's not always the most talented team. The most talented team doesn't always win. There's other factors that go into it, and playing cleaner, playing smarter, executing is a big part of that. So my third thing here that has to change for Georgia if it wants to win this game is win the turnover battle. Guys, Georgia in these last 3 games, Alabama, all 3 losses, has lost the turnover battle 6-1 for the last 3 matchups. Georgia is -5 in turnover margin against Alabama the last 3 years. Okay? Think about that. -5 in turnover margin and lost those 3 games by a combined 13 points. 2 losses by 3 points and 1 loss by a touchdown, all one-score games. You think those turnovers had a little something to do with how those games ultimately turned out when the margins are that small? Yeah, probably. And think about the first matchup this year, guys. Let's talk about this year specifically. Only 1 turnover in the entire game by either team. That 1 turnover is committed by Georgia. You know what happened. I hate to kill him. Nate's been doing a great job for us. Love Nate Frazier. But Nate Frazier fumbles on our own 9-yard line late in the first half. Bama converts that into a field goal. And remind me, how much did Georgia lose that game by? Oh, that's right, 3 points. There's no guarantee Georgia wins the game if they don't get that field goal there. But it maybe changes how Georgia calls the game. Maybe Georgia doesn't go for it on 4th and 1 and gets 3 points there and maybe wins the game down the 4th quarter. Potentially. I don't know. But that was obviously a huge factor. So if you want to reverse your fortune against Alabama, stop turning the football over. Stop shooting yourself in the foot. That's something that absolutely has to change. You can't be -5 in the last 3 games against this team. We have to win the turnover battle in this game. Now, finally here, the 4th thing I think has to change, on a very related note to the turnovers, Georgia simply has to execute better. So when I talk about playing cleaner, I'm talking about execution, guys, because in my opinion, it is execution failures, not talent deficiencies, that have sunk Georgia in each of the last 3 matchups with this Alabama program. And turnovers are certainly included in that, but it's more than just turnovers. It's also Arian Smith dropping a perfect bomb that was likely a touchdown on the opening drive in Tuscaloosa last year. It's Arian Smith, same game. Not getting the audible, being the only player on the offense not getting the audible to a screen that if he gets it, would have been a touchdown, right? It's poor eye discipline. Back in 23 in the SEC Championship game and back last year, that created explosive plays for Jalen Milroe. It's Talon Taylor dropping a wide open touchdown pass in his freaking hands in the second half of that game earlier this year. It's the offensive line blowing an assignment, young offensive lineman blowing an assignment on 4th and 1 when the offensive coordinator dials up a go-ahead touchdown in the fourth quarter. So if Georgia wants to beat Bama, and in this narrative that's been going on for far too long, it has to out-execute Alabama. Because the reality is, Bama has out-executed Georgia. Bama has not out-talented Georgia, out-manned Georgia the last 3 games. Bama has out-executed Georgia. And that's a part of being better. So give Bama credit. They deserve to win each of the last 3 matchups because they've out-executed Georgia. If Georgia wants to win this game, that has to change. Georgia has to out-execute the Tide. So make no mistake about it, guys. I firmly believe that Georgia is better than Alabama this year. Georgia lost the first matchup. I know Bama fans say, well, then obviously Georgia's not better. They lost the game. I think these teams played 10 times this year that Georgia would win the majority of those games. I think Georgia is a more complete team than Alabama. Georgia's better on defense. Georgia's actually better on offense. Go look at the numbers, guys. It's just reality. Georgia runs the ball better. Georgia stops the run better. But if you want to change your fortunes in this game, if you want to flip the script on Alabama, you can't wet the bed because big bad Bama is in your head all over again. If that happens, if you get psyched out and you make this game bigger than it is, if you let it grow into outsized proportions in your brain, then none of it matters. None of the fact that Georgia runs the ball better, that Georgia stops the run better, that Georgia's better defensively, that Georgia is better offensively, statistically, none of that matters. So if you go out and you execute and you let your talent do what it's capable of doing, if you lock in, get the job done, you go out, you win the football game. So there you go, guys. Those are the 4 things I think has to change for Georgia if the Dogs want to win this game and finally, I guess for the second time, get that Alabama monkey off their back once and for all. So make sure to check back later this week, guys. I will have my official prediction for this game. Went through the keys here. What's the change? I'll give you my final prediction, my final thoughts on this game later on this week. So come back and check out for more. But if you are a Georgia fan, go ahead and subscribe right now. You can expect this kind of content every single week here on this channel. So subscribe, like, comment. What are your thoughts? What do you think has to change? What are the Dogs have to do differently this time around to actually beat Alabama, right? And so we can have that feeling, something similar to what we had back on January 10th of 2022. Thank you guys for being here. I am very, very appreciative of all your support. But I'm Tyler, and as always, go Dogs.
Man, is there going to be some property destroyed tonight. 26-21. Dogs on top.